Good evening and welcome to a special live broadcast ahead of a powerful day on Africa's calendar. The African Anti-Corruption Day, officially marked on the 11th of July every year. The theme this year affects every Kenyan at every level, promoting human dignity in the fight against corruption. Because corruption isn't just about stolen billions, it's about stolen lives. A child denied medicine, a graduate denied a job, a community denied justice. The African Anti-Corruption Day is observed on July 11th, commemorating the 2003 African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. 48 African countries, including Kenya, have ratified it. The goal? To promote accountability, strengthen institutions, and protect citizens from the impact of corruption. Tonight, we're joined by two people who know this fight from the inside out. We have Mr. Jackson Mue, the Director of Field Services and Coordination at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, with over 20 years investigating economic crimes and leading intelligence units. We also have with us Paul Ndemo, the Deputy Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, as well as the spokesperson of the Judiciary. Gentlemen, good evening and thank you for being with us here on NTV. Let's begin with the basics, Jackson. Why was there a need for an African Anti-Corruption Day?
Thank you, Michelle, for that question, and good evening, viewers. It was important to have this day because at the time this convention was started, Africa was bleeding with corruption. The situation has not changed much, but through this convention, there has been both institutional and legal reforms which have been implemented in various African countries for purposes of putting in place measures to prevent and fight corruption, particularly in the African continent. In Kenya, we have not been left behind. After this convention, the Kenyan government has been able to put in place measures. We have laws enabling the fight against corruption, right from our constitution to various pieces of legislation. We also have institutional framework which has been set up to and including coming up with a lead agency to fight corruption, which is the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, obviously working with other criminal justice sectors, sector institutions. So this was necessitated by the problem and the ranging corruption in the continent of Africa and the specific countries. Thank you.
This convention, the African Union Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption, this was back in 2003, the decision to create an African Anti-Corruption Day. Ndemo, over 20 years later, where are we in the fight against corruption and how bad is corruption in Kenya today?
Thank you, Michelle, for that question, and good evening, viewers. I think there have been very many efforts that really have been put in place to try to deal with corruption. As Mr. Mue said, Kenya is a signatory to the African Union Convention, but Kenya is also signatory to the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. So I think from a policy point, from a legal and a statutory point, there definitely is commitment to be able to address the issues of corruption. But then on the ground, of course, there are very many challenges that we see in issues of service, delivery, issues to do with members of the public, so whether private citizens, public individuals. So I think a lot has been done, but there's a lot more that needs to be done. And I think that is the value of a conversation like this and having a day such as the African Anti-Corruption Day to commemorate the day and look at what are the gains that we have gotten and what can we do better, because this is a critical conversation for every Kenyan.
I like that you mentioned that there is a commitment to address corruption, because many times you hear that it is the lack of commitment and the lack of goodwill to addressing corruption that is a weak link in the fight against corruption. But Mr. Mue, a recent report by Transparency International found that 1 in 3 Kenyans paid a bribe in the past year, that Kenya reportedly loses about 700 billion shillings every year, perhaps more, to corruption. That's about 30% of Kenya's budget. Which sectors, from your experience, are most vulnerable to corruption today? What's the EACC doing about it?
Thank you for that question. Corruption, to start with, let me say, is affecting most of the sectors in Kenya, because corruption generally follows resources. And when you look at our Kenyan economy, resources have been devolved to virtually all sectors of the economy. And equally, corruption has devolved to these sectors. Because of this, our main focus for EACC has not necessarily been to follow on a specific sector, but we have been able to profile and come up with specific areas which we think are more vulnerable. Right now, the Commission is focusing on capital-intensive projects. There is high focus on capital-intensive projects because they take huge resources, huge budgetary resources. And these capital-intensive projects are intended to provide services to the wider public. And therefore, it is important for the limited resources which are available for law enforcement agencies to be directed at the areas which create maximum impact. We do also realize that Kenyans, the ordinary Kenyan, would seek various services from various service delivery points. Issuance of identity cards, issuance of passports, medical services in our public hospitals.
Some even bursaries.
Some even bursaries. Because of that, we have a strategy to enhance our focus on service delivery points so that we mitigate the challenges of corruption affecting those areas, so that the ordinary mwananchi, when they are seeking these services, we enhance their probability of being served as it is required.
Ndemo, the judiciary itself plays a central role in tackling corruption. And so I'm going from, with what Mr. Mwe says, but many Kenyans feel that justice is slow. Trials take too long. Some actually feel it may be by design to protect the powerful. What's being done to speed up trials, corruption cases, and restore trust in the public?
The judiciary is just one of the players in the justice sector. And when you look at the justice sector, it's really a chain. And one sector, one player leads to the next, and So what we have specifically done as the judiciary is to we have specialized courts that deal with corruption matters, both at the High Court and at the lower courts, what we call the magistrates' courts. So you have those specialized courts whose mandate is specifically to deal with corruption cases, so that we do not mix them up with other matters, and also to ensure that there's, they are dealt with, faster. The issue about the delays is really a systemic issue of the justice sector. If you look at it, corruption cases are not your run-of-the-mill cases. There are some cases currently, I can tell you, where you find there are 30 accused persons. One case, 30 accused persons, and you're dealing with hundreds of millions of shillings. A case like that has got 15 to 20 advocates. You find that case has got maybe 70 witnesses. You cannot expect a case like that to take 3 months, to take 6 months, to take, that short period. So when you have that, mix of different players, you have lawyers there, you have, investigators there, they're coming before the court, you must give everybody their due, time and justice. But that said, we have worked very hard to ensure that we have operations within those courts where we interact, for instance, with what we call the bar bench committees. Bar bench committees are committees comprising lawyers, that is the bar, and then the bench is the judiciary. And these committees, they are working to ensure that we come up with rules, and some actually already have come up with that, so that we can ensure that when matters like those come before court, then you have already done the preliminary work. And so some of those also involve things like having a no adjournment policy. Because one of the challenges we've had in those cases now, like the one I've told you, if you have a case that has got 15 lawyers representing 30 accused persons, in all likelihood, if you come for a hearing on a particular day, somebody there will be asking for an adjournment for some reason or other. So we have worked hard to ensure that those particular matters, we have what we call pre-trial preparations, so that the parties come to court, you make sure that very critical documents, for instance, have already been exchanged, and on the day of trial, we are ready to go for trial. So there are efforts that are being put in place to try to reduce the delay because of the complex nature of the way corruption cases are.
In the period of those delays, and we have a viewer asking, in the period of those delays, many times you'll find after the wait, there's a file missing, there's a document missing, and the case cannot continue. Again, many feel that this happens by design. What happens in cases like that?
So one of the things that we have done is to automate our systems, and we are very big right now on electronic filing. So all across the country now, those incidences have virtually disappeared, because when you're filing your cases, you are doing electronic filing of your cases. So the documents that you will require for your case, they are in the system. So when we come for trial now, as I said earlier, we have this pre-trial. So in the pre-trial preparation, we go through and say, fine, you want to produce 100 documents? Let's go through the list. Do we have this? Do we have this? Do we have this? Defense, are you comfortable? Are you ready? Fine. Prosecution, are you ready to have a hearing on this particular date? Fine. Once that is confirmed, then there is really no reason at the trial date to say that this has disappeared. Whatever is said to have disappeared is actually in the system. So the automation is actually one of the strategies that we have used to ensure that there is greater efficiency and that we are dealing with those human error malfeasances, so that we are just focusing on justice.
All right, and speaking of justice, let's focus on the theme of this year's Anti-Corruption Day, and that is promoting human dignity in the fight against corruption. And, I mean, humanizing corruption in this instance, because when someone is denied emergency care because they're unable to pay a bribe, or when fake drugs enter public hospitals, it stops just being about corruption. It then becomes an attack on human dignity and fundamental rights. Mr. Mue, in your over 20 years of fieldwork, how have you seen corruption harm or impede the dignity of the ordinary Kenyan?
Thank you for that question. Corruption, it is true as a starting point to indicate that corruption creates indignity to the human person. And how it does this, corruption takes away resources. And once resources which are intended to provide public services are taken away by corruption, then it becomes very difficult for government and even other institutions to provide the services which are required. You can take the example of a government project. Let's say you are building an hospital to serve members of the public. If corruption creeps in and the resources are taken away, obviously that project will not be completed. When it is not completed, it would mean members of the public who were intended to benefit from that service are denied that service. And the fact that they are denied that service does not mean they will not get sick. They will need medical services, but that service will not be available. And that creates indignity. Take, for example, the case of the transport sector. Cases of bribery on our roads. What is the resultant effect of that? You'll find people being filed in a public service vehicle, being carried in a very indignified manner. At times we experience, and this has been recurrent in Kenya, where we experience very preventable accidents which resort to loss of life. It's not just lack of dignity. At times it's complete loss of life. We have many stored public projects, many stored public projects. And you know, like for infrastructure projects, which it takes so much resources, unless they are completed, the services cannot be enjoyed. The fact that money has been invested in a huge project. For example, if you said money was invested in a stadium and the stadium was not completed, the stadium is not going to be used. It is not going to provide the social service which was required unless it is completed. And looking at all that, and we can give as many examples as we can think of. Look at the education sector. Education is a basic right for every person. But we know there is corruption in issuance of bursaries. There is corruption in supporting even disbursement of resources to public schools and universities. When that happens, the person who suffers mainly is the poor person. They are denied an opportunity to get education, and therefore their future is affected in the fact that they will not be prepared with the skills which will be required to earn a decent life later in life. And therefore, they are compromised for life. So we can give as many examples. And this has been happening. And because of this, Michelle, I would say this is the reason the Commission is targeting these specific areas. The Commission is very keen on dealing with issues of bribery. Because bribes taken by public officials, they are only intended to compromise a public service. And once that public service is compromised, a right to a human being, a right to a citizen is taken away. And because of this, we have been able to make some progress. We have quite a number of cases which have been investigated. As a way of intervening when the law has already been broken, we have in excess of 756 cases which have been investigated successfully and taken to court by the Director of Public Prosecution. And again, knowing Michelle, the main objective why people engage in corruption is personal benefit. The Commission has focused on tracing and recovering corruptly and illegally acquired assets. And to that end, in the last 5 years, the Commission has been able to recover in excess of 28 billion Kenya shillings. And there are many cases which are being pursued in various courts. And we are very happy that now we have a specialized division of the High Court dealing with corruption. And through this, we are pursuing in excess of 400 cases with a view to recover over 50 billion Kenya shillings. So as the magnitude is still large in terms of the resources which are being lost to corruption, there are significant steps which are being taken. And there is investment to that effect with a view to contain the problem. But it's a gradual process. One institution cannot win this war alone. And that's why, like in this commemoration, one of the objectives is really to sensitize the public and to call upon them to support the fight against corruption so that everybody working together, then we will corner the people who have been engaging in corruption, because as less people will be available to give bribes, then the problem of corruption is likely to reduce.
All right. Let's revisit the point on asset recovery and recovery of proceeds of corruption. You've stated figures, and the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is now looking to recover about 50 billion shillings worth of stolen funds. But many keep asking, is it enough in contrast with the amount that is being lost in public funds? Are you hitting your targets with regard to asset recovery?
Thank you for that question. It would have been very good if the Commission, working with all Kenyans, was able to recover all the stolen assets. But we know it's a gradual process because we must go through the entire criminal justice infrastructure for us to be able to recover assets. 10 years ago, the issue of recovery of corruptly acquired assets was unknown in this country. But today, we are giving those statistics because there has been innovation, there has been reforms, and through that, with the resources available to fight corruption, we are making progress. And I would tell you, through this strategy, we are seeing many people who acquired public assets through irregular means approaching the Commission, coming forward and saying, I would rather return these assets than to be taken through the criminal process. And that is a step in the right direction. And there is something I will call upon Kenyans and anybody who may be having assets which they acquired through irregular means to approach the commission with a view to surrender, because it was never theirs. We are not where we are supposed to be, but we are making progress and the speed is reasonable. Thank you.
If I may just add on that, the court has actually made a determination in a case that was settled at the Court of Appeal about how that property, there is no constitutional right to holding a property that was illegally acquired. So there is no rescue for anyone who wants now to challenge that in court, because the court has clearly said that if this property is unlawfully acquired, then the commission has got the power to actually seek for forfeiture of that particular property, and there are steps to be followed. The threshold, of course, for proving that is lower than in a criminal case. And so if you cannot prove that the property that you have was properly, lawfully acquired, then you stand to lose that. So I think one very clear law that has been established through the courts, through jurisprudence, is in a case that went up to the Court of Appeal. And I think it is a great way that, as the Commission is pursuing that would really, really help for this fight against corruption to be pursued. All right.
I want to take a break, but Demo, even as you speak about dignity, how does the judiciary then safeguard the dignity of vulnerable people in corruption cases, especially those with no legal representation?
Yeah, so the thing is, if you look statistically, almost all corruption cases have got legal representation. Invariably, they all have legal representation. But where in very serious cases we have, for example, where it involves children in conflict with the law or other very serious offenses like manslaughter, murder, then the law dictates that legal counsel is then provided. But for corruption cases, invariably there is a representation by counsel, and so those matters have not really been much to, they've not been brought to attention as such.
All right.
Yes.
Let's take a short break here on NTV. We're having a conversation, a timely conversation, ahead of the African Anti-Corruption Day, to be commemorated tomorrow, the 11th of July, under the theme, Promoting Human Dignity in the Fight Against Corruption. We're speaking to Jackson Mwehe, he is Director of Field Services and Coordination of the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, as well as Paul Ndemo, the Deputy Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, as well as the Judiciary spokesperson. We do invite your questions and feedback on this conversation, especially on the state of corruption in Kenya. And also an announcement for our avid fans of drama Norma. Norma will be returning tomorrow. We do apologize for that interruption in your daily viewing. Let's take a short break now. We'll be back with this conversation in just a moment.
Downy refill pouches, lasting longer than expensive perfumes. Cut, store, and no need to add water. Serve with a Downy refill.
Change often requires resources.
So what was the cost? The cost was 62 people had died as a result of participation in protests.
We're having a government that runs a government like a WhatsApp group.
In the last 12 months alone, at least 82 enforced disappearances have been documented.
The question really is, has this had an impact?
We can fix it. We are the Mr. and Miss Fix It.
There are things that we have to agree as a people, as a nation, that that's not our portion.
This is The Last Word, every Tuesday on NTV.
Many of the cabinet secretaries who are there, they don't want to pick my calls even on WhatsApp.
We have a political system in Kenya that favors criminals.
We cannot have a president donating 20 million to churches every Sunday. We can't have tax taxes being misappropriated. We don't have 7 billion being allocated to Parliament when education is suffering.
We struggle to understand how we are supposed to handle our taxes.
So let's not sit and wait for someone else to do something. You, what are you doing to fix this nation?
When NTV caught up with you, you said you don't need a title to do the right thing.
Thank you so much. May this country, may this nation appreciate your efforts that I cannot do much, but let the world know that you exist.
Want to know the biggest story of the week? Do not worry. The Weekly Review got you covered. For in-depth analysis of politics, business, governance, as well as social issues, the Weekly Review covers it all. For well-researched, exclusive and investigative content, read the Weekly Review every Sunday in the Sunday Nation.
I am Chef Ombachi. Today I'm cooking ugali na Ajab Premium Maize Meal. Boil water, done. Add Ajab Premium Maize Meal, done. Grab your mwiko and stir the mixture, done. Enjoy the amazing aroma. Enjoy incredibly soft ugali, done. Ingia ligi ya kipekee na Ajab Premium Maize Meal. Enjoy white, soft, aromatic flour.
Sour petroleum jelly repairs dry skin like no other. Easy to spread and moisturizes like no other. Non-sticky like no other. It's easy to spread and non-sticky like no other. Sour petroleum jelly repairs dry skin and moisturizes like no other. Great quality product from Pwani Oil. This is NTV.
Tonight, case dismissed. Court clears the hurdle for newly appointed IEBC chairperson and commissioners, allowing them to assume office. Also tonight, the human cost of violent protests.
Sasa hii mzee wangu amerudi kuwa kama mtoto. Haizi rudi jinsi alivyokuwa. Amekuwa kiwete.
Families in distress over police brutality as public outrage rises over President William Ruto's shoot in the legs directive.
If we see our people being shot and becoming disabled, we will hold them accountable.
Plus,
I'm a mother of 5 kids. Wamepoteza baba yao. Na unataka mimi unanifre mimi niende nikae kwa ndani. Do you care about me and my kids?
Who wanted Kenneth Kamto dead? Revisiting the ghastly murder of Kilifi's first deputy governor. Murder Tapes presents the deputy's last night. And
walituma huyu mtoto nyumbani kwa shule ya Kilifi. Na mimi ni mgonjwa pia.
When all else fails, a granny's bid to keep her grandson in school after failing to raise funds for the required school fees arrears.
This June and July on Twende, tunarudi Pwani. We are heading back to the coast to explore ancient towns and discover new islands you've never seen before. Nyakundi might be a little too excited. We'll go dune bashing in Mambrui, take a breather by the Sabaki River. Ever tasted pweza choma? Nitamu kwanza na giza. And venture deep into Arabuke Sokoke Forest to search for its elusive elephants. It's an adventure you don't want to miss. This June and July, only on NTV.
Always verify licensed firms at www.cma.or.ke. Got a concern? DM us. Invest smart. Stay alert.
evening and welcome back to this special live broadcast ahead of the African Anti-Corruption Day to be marked tomorrow, the 11th of July, under the theme Promoting Human Dignity in the Fight Against Corruption. In studio with us tonight, Jackson Mue, the Director of Field Services and Coordination at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. We also have Paul Ndemo, Deputy Chief Registrar and spokesperson of the Judiciary. Gentlemen, many thanks for staying on with us. Now, Mr. Mue, technology is now a powerful tool in exposing corruption, from citizen journalism to specific tools for anonymous reporting of corruption. The SEC itself has launched a digital platform for whistleblowers to report corruption. How do these tools work?
Thank you for that question. Technology is an avoidable innovation today, and EACC has been able to respond to the benefits which technology brings in the fight against corruption. Using technology tools, the Commission work has been made a lot easier because the Commission is able to access various databases and various information, and has also been able to establish various channels where the Commission is able to connect with the public. The Commission has been receiving very good reports from members of the public using existing tools, technology tools, and through that, the Commission has been able to take to make interventions on some of the reports which are being received from members of the public. But over and above that, we do know corruption is a white-collar crime. Corruption involves huge documentation. And because of that, again, these innovations in technology and ICT in particular have been assisting in particularly analysis of information related to information which is hidden in various documents. For a long time, there has been public debate looking at things related to budgeted corruption and the likes. When we talk about budgeted corruption, we are talking about items which could actually exist in our budgets, but with no intention of projects being implemented. These tools have been very helpful because we are able to do very detailed analytics. We are able to filter these things. Again, using technology, again, we have been able to map out, and we can always know which projects are happening all over the country. We are able to use technology to know the progress being made in various, particularly infrastructure projects. And through this, we can always know, because we have access to information related to resources put for these projects, and we can relate to the progress which is being made, particularly in the development of these projects. And that already gives us a starting point. We accredit that to use of technology. And EACC, working with other partners, is investing heavily on technology. We have been able to develop specialized capacity to utilize ICT. We have a fully fledged forensic lab which is able to utilize information available to analyze and come up with evidence and material which can support these corruption cases effectively in our courts.
Right, and so those are digital tools for whistleblowers and anonymous reporting. But in this age of technology, there's also concerns about digital surveillance, for example. So you can really be sure it's very anonymous, so it's completely anonymous. That being said, how is the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission protecting whistleblowers? Because that has been a big concern, that whistleblowers come and give information, but then they're left by themselves.
Thank you again for that question. To start with, let me lay the foundation, and probably Mr. Ndemo will be commenting on this. Currently in Kenya, as we are, we do not have a whistleblower protection law. But I know there is a bill in Parliament which is intended to come up with a law to protect our whistleblowers. What we have currently is a Witness Protection Act, and through that we have an agency which can protect witnesses. And the witnesses, of course, will be people who are already supporting cases which are already in court. But persons who are providing information to law enforcement agencies, the whistleblowers, we currently do not have a law. So what we do is we work with them to maintain anonymous reporting. As a commission, we have a digital anonymous reporting system. which we have operated for some time. We have not experienced instances of breach of that anonymous reporting system. But again, apart from people reporting using the anonymous reporting system, even the walk-ins who come to the commission, apart from taking reports which they bring to the commission, we have an additional responsibility of even advising them on how to conduct themselves after providing information to law enforcement agencies. Our officers, we keep training them, we keep on retraining to advise them even on how to handle information provided by these whistleblowers. So currently, we have internal administrative mechanism for purposes of protecting whistleblowers. But the law on whistleblowers will go a long way in providing a elaborate legal mechanism of protecting whistleblowers.
Right, so Ndemo, how far are we from having this law?
Yeah, well, that is a matter that would be better commented from Parliament, because that is a matter that is before Parliament. But as far as witnesses are concerned, that Mr. Mue talked about, when these witnesses then come to court now to testify in particular matters, they are actually, we give them priority as the judiciary, because these are protected witnesses, and we know that their situations are very sensitive and complicated. And so there is priority that is given, and this is done by the Witness Protection Agency that is charged with that particular responsibility. So we work very closely just to ensure that then, for instance, they are able to give their evidence in camera. They're able to do that quicker, so that then they can be, if necessary, offloaded from the program, sooner than later. Yes.
When you talk about technology, even with these anonymous reporting tools, Kenya's justice system is still largely analog, even with the changes we've seen with virtual court proceedings. Are courts ready for digital corruption cases involving cryptocurrency, e-procurement, AI-generated evidence? Are we ready for that?
We have taken very great strides. We have made great strides in terms of technology. As I mentioned earlier, we have 143 courts across the country, from Lamu to Loitoktok to Marsabit to Moyale. All those courts, you can file your cases electronically from wherever you are. Apart from that, we have got a judiciary academy that is very keen on developing the capacity of judges and judicial officers. In fact, as we speak now, there has been discussion and debate about AI. So we've not been left behind. We are preparing ourselves for what is currently here, and also what is coming. So in terms of technology, we have invested heavily. We have what we call Mahakama Popote. For instance, Mahakama Popote is an initiative that was started to help courts that have got a lot of work, like Milimani Commercial Court, Mombasa, Milimani Small Claims Court. They have got a lot of work. Now, we have got other stations across the country which do not have as much volume. But the policy of the judiciary, through the Judicial Service Commission, is that you cannot have a court station that has got only one magistrate. You need to have at least two, for purposes of just making sure that services are rendered properly. If one goes on leave, that goes on. So what we end up having is courts that have got that volume of work are able to redistribute their work to those very far-flung but not as busy courts. So in terms of technology, and that happens through technology, so we are really well connected in terms of technology, and we are very keen to see how we can build capacity of our judicial officers, our judges, so that, as technology evolves, we do that. Just this year, we had a colloquium or a conference of all the magistrates. And you can guess what the topic was? It was on cybersecurity and technology. So we are preparing ourselves, knowing that technology really is the next frontier of disputes and matters that are going to come to court.
All right, and of course, I mean, Kenya has a very young, tech-savvy population.
Yes.
Mr. Mue, when we were having this conversation last year for the African Anti-Corruption Day, part of the theme was to bring all hands on board. And part of that was to bring the youth on board in the fight against corruption. What role do Kenya's youth play in this fight, and how can the institutions involve them more in this fight?
Thank you for that question. I will start by explaining the kind of infrastructure which exists for involving members of the public in the fight against corruption. We do have a forum called the Kenya Leadership and Integrity Forum. This forum brings together about 20 sectors. You have the government, you have the civil society, you have the private sector, you have development partners, you have the business community, we have the youth. We have specific roles which have been identified to be undertaken by each of these sectors. And this is guided through a strategic plan for that forum called the Kenya Integrity Plan. In the plan, it provides steps on what each sector is supposed to do for purposes of playing their role, their very unique role in the fight against corruption. Because we are of the view that the fight against corruption cannot be left with one institution or even government alone. There is need for involvement of everybody. The youth, there is a platform for them. Over and above that, we are also engaging the youth in different platforms. The youth are tech savvy. Because of that, we are also investing in technology. We are starting to invest on issues to do with AI. We are investing so much on platforms which the youth can utilize to provide information to the commission, such as social media. We are big in social media because the social media is a platform the youth have excelled in using. And through this kind of platforms where you find a lot of youth, we are getting very good leads. We are getting very good information from the youth on how ideas, number one, on how to deal with the certain emerging trends in the fight against corruption. We are also getting reports on where it is happening. The youth using their own networks, they have been able to profile and they have been taking very keen interest on what is happening. And they are very keen on projects, particularly being implemented by the government. And we are getting a lot of reports from the youth, particularly using the social media, some anonymously, and some of them are also even coming forward to report. So we are saying this is an area which is growing, is an area we will continue to invest. We are training our investigators, our lawyers, and our prevention officers on new technologies. We have teams which are currently being trained on issues related to AI, particularly because AI is the future. And being the future, a lot of law enforcement agencies, if they were not to train and create the necessary capacity, then the criminals might overtake. In most cases, the criminals move very quickly and they are able to utilize these technologies. And the only way to contain them is again to be at the same level, if not better. And we are creating that capacity through training. The Commission has been able to start its own academy for providing specialized training. We have an academy called the National Integrity Academy. And this academy is an academy for providing specialized training specifically on emerging areas.
All right. Yes. As we begin to wind up, we asked our audience to send some of their most pressing questions with regard to the fight against corruption. And let me just begin with those questions. Ndemo, this one would be for you. The judiciary launched anti-corruption courts. Have these made a difference in conviction rates or timelines in the country?
I'll give a resounding yes, because you see, we have got, in a year now, in the last report we did, we had cases, over 500,000 cases filed. Now, this 500,000 plus cases filed goes across, the whole gamut, whether it is, criminal, civil, family. And now, when you have those matters all being done in one court, then you invariably expect that there is likely to be some delay because all those cases will be put on the same platform. But when you have now these specialized anti-corruption courts, they specifically focus on corruption matters. And therefore, they're able to give them the attention and the time. So in the last year, we had 1,700 approximately matters that were filed, corruption matters. Of those, about 77 to 80%, there was a clearance rate of 77% of cases filed. Not specifically those that were filed, but those that have been resolved in that period. So you have 1,700 filed, then within that same period, you have 77% of cases filed, resolved. So the fact that you have this court that is specifically just dealing with these matters has made a huge difference. The issue that we are working to streamline, as I talked about earlier, is the processes now. Before we go to court, how well are we prepared for the hearing, so that we don't come to the hearing and then we are having preliminary objections being raised at the hearing. Is it possible, and that is what we are pushing and having those discussions with the lawyers, that you are able to finalize all what we call the preliminary issues before you go to hearing. When you've set a date for hearing, we know it is a hearing. But should you not be ready, then you have that case mentioned before, so that we resolve those issues. So, and you can only do that in a specialized court like that. And we have these courts across the country. So we are working very hard to build capacity of those courts, because we know they are going to help in dealing with those matters. But again, as Mr. Moe said, this fight cannot be won by one institution. The judiciary is a referee in these matters. In the scheme of things within the justice system, the judiciary is a referee. So we have to rely on the investigator, EACC. We have to rely on the prosecutor, ODPP. We have to rely on the lawyers. So there has to be a collective effort for us to ensure that these matters are speedily handled.
How collective is that effort? Because several times you've seen blame games between these very same players in this anti-corruption chain. The DCI coming and saying the judiciary is the weak link, and the judiciary saying, actually, it's the DCI. See how, they gave us 70 people on the charge sheet. We've seen a lot of blame games here, sibling rivalry. How collective is this effort really?
Yeah, so we have an entity that is called the National Council on the Administration of Justice that brings together all these players. So the judiciary, EACC, the police, civil society organizations, Law Society of Kenya, and part of what is discussed there is how do we deal with these bottlenecks. And actually, in the recent past, there is an anti-corruption guiding framework that was launched by the NCAJ, just so that now we can look at every institution. How can you deal with the bottlenecks in your institution? How can you, as the judiciary, deal with the problems that you have? Because apart from looking at the corruption problem, from a country perspective, what are you doing as an institution, as the judiciary? What will you do? How will you ensure that you are dealing with certain areas or perceptions? Because we have issues. We have brokers in courts who come there, and you think that these are staff members who are then asking for bribes, and how are you dealing with those kind of things? EACC, how are you going to deal? The police and other societies like that. So that framework is helping us to have that very candid conversation as to how we are dealing with corruption issues.
Okay, gentlemen, we must wind up. But Mr. Moe, 2 quick questions from our viewers. You mentioned lifestyle audits and asset recovery. How many public officials, can you give us a number, have actually had their assets seized?
Quite a number of public officials have had their assets seized, because like I indicated, we have recovered assets worth over 28 billion. And through that, over 100 public officials have had their assets recovered. We have recovered both movable, immovable, and the cash assets from public officials. We have also recovered assets which are acquired by public officials in a manner which they cannot explain, what we call unexplained assets. And therefore, the numbers today, I would not think would be the most significant, but the most important thing is to indicate to members of the public that there is a framework for tracing any corruptly acquired assets, and putting in place measures to recover those assets. And that has been done. And the beauty of this is we are seeing some of these assets which are being recovered being turned for public good. And that is the most important thing, particularly reflecting on the theme of this year's commemoration when we are dealing with human dignity. A number of these assets, particularly landed assets, which have been recovered by EACC, have been put into good use. We have landed properties which now are being used for affordable housing. And we do believe through such interventions, this is intended to improve the dignity of the persons and the families who eventually will occupy those homes in spaces which ideally had been taken by individuals through corrupt means.
All right, and ending it on a point of dignity is a good note to end this conversation. That is Jackson Moore. He is the Director of Field Services and Coordination at the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission. Also with us in studio is Paul Ndemo, the Deputy Chief Registrar and Spokesperson of the Judiciary. We are discussing the African Anti-Corruption Day, which is coming up tomorrow, under the theme promoting human dignity in the fight against corruption. A theme that reminds us that corruption isn't just about law enforcement. It's also about protecting dignity and fundamental rights. Tomorrow, the 11th of July, Kenya joins the rest of the continent in recommitting to this cause. Many thanks for watching tonight. My name is Michelle Ngele Odhiambo. Do stay tuned for the day's top stories coming up on NTV tonight.